Settle yourself now and allow your body to find a place of ease. This is not a journey of urgency nor of drama, but one of slow unfolding. We will wander through history together, not to chase great battles or loud victories, but to linger on the quieter mysteries, the subtle practices and the hidden rituals that shaped the lives of rulers long ago. The tale we follow tonight is both legend and history, blurred in the way all old stories are. It is said that there were kings, great rulers of vast lands who, even in the heart of winter, could lie down to rest without a blanket, without a fur, without a single cover. Their palaces of stone stood beneath frozen stars. Their chambers were empty of firewood. Yet these kings closed their eyes and drifted into stillness, as though the frost outside was no more troubling than a summer breeze. How could this be? Was it discipline? Was it faith? Was it the wisdom of sages whispered across centuries? Or was it something even simpler, something found in the breath, in the quiet, in the stillness that lives within us all? As we begin, imagine yourself stepping slowly into this story. Imagine walking through the gates of a palace where the night air is cold, yet not cruel, where silence itself seems to have weight, and where history waits patiently like snow resting on stone. And so, our journey begins with the silent palace. The palace stands at the edge of winter, its walls broad and unyielding, stones gathered from quarries long forgotten. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and the sharper hint of frost. Snow lingers along the edges of its courtyards, where torchlight flickers gently, casting golden pools across the whiteness. Inside, the corridors stretch endlessly. The sound of your own footsteps seems softened, absorbed by the vastness of space. No clamor of servants, no hurried officials, only silence, broken occasionally by the low creak of wood, the faint sigh of wind pressing against shutters. The king's chamber is large, though nearly bare. There is no roaring fire, no furs heaped upon the bed. The stone walls bear only the simplest of hangings, muted in color, heavy with time. The air inside is as cold as the air outside, yet the room feels somehow still an island of quiet suspended within the long night. At the center of the chamber lies the bed, wide but covered only with plain sheets. No blanket rests upon it, and here the king prepares to sleep. He does not shiver. He does not rush to cover himself. Instead, he lies down slowly, his movements deliberate, his breath steady. You may imagine him now, a figure of calm, resting against the vastness of the stone room. His breath rises and falls, each exhale a faint mist that dissolves into the cold air. Around him, the palace seems to lean into silence, as though honoring the ritual. This stillness is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the rhythm of the palace at night, when guards keep their posts outside, when courtyards lie still beneath snow, when even the stars seem sharper in the frozen sky. Within this quiet, the king closes his eyes. The chamber, stripped of warmth and ornament, becomes a sanctuary of discipline, a place where comfort is not expected, and where endurance is as natural as breathing. And so, the night deepens around him. Silent palace, vast and unmoved, cradles its ruler in stillness. And the king, without blanket or fire, drifts gently towards sleep. The night is deep. Beyond the walls of the palace, frost gathers upon every surface. The branches of bare trees glisten faintly in the pale starlight, their shadows drawn thin and delicate across the snow. The air is sharp, so sharp that each breath feels almost like glass being drawn into the lungs. And yet within the chamber, there is no panic, no hurry, no rush to escape the cold. The king lies still. His body reclines as though the bed beneath him were no more than a resting stone, and yet he is not troubled. His eyes are closed, his face composed, and the rhythm of his breath is even almost impossibly calm. Inhale, the air enters, cool and cutting. Exhale. The warmth of his own body softens it, turning frost into mist, a gentle cloud rising and disappearing into silence. Imagine yourself in that room. Stone walls hold the cold as though it is part of their very being, seeping out slowly, touching the skin with a persistent whisper. Most would recoil, clutching at covers, seeking fire, calling for warmth. But here the king chooses otherwise. His breath is not hurried. There is no trembling at the edges of his lips, no quickening of pace. Each inhale is measured, drawn as if from an endless well. Each exhale is deliberate, soft, like a slow release of tension. The breath itself becomes something more than air. It becomes a rhythm, a steadying drum that exists inside the body, untouched by the cold outside. With every breath, warmth is kindled. The chest expands, the heart beats steadily, and the cold is met not with fear, but with presence. The body accepts what comes. The chill is not denied, not fought, but folded gently into the quiet rhythm of living. The king's discipline is evident here, not in grand gestures, not in feats of might, but in the smallest, most constant act, the drawing in and letting go of breath. Think of the air itself. It moves like an unseen river, flowing through the palace, slipping between shutters, finding its way beneath doors. That same air now moves into the king's lungs, not resisted, not rejected, but welcomed. It is as though he makes peace with the cold by allowing it to enter, to mingle, and then to leave, again transformed. Softened, reshaped. The room around him remains unmoving. The walls are thick with winter. The floor carries the hardness of stone. The ceiling arches above, casting shadows like faint waves of night. And in the midst of all this, the breath continues. Inhale, there is the sting of frost. Exhale, there is a gentle mist, a sigh released into the stillness. The guards outside shift uneasily, their armor cold against their skin. The breaths come faster, shorter, each one a reminder of the season's bite. They envy what they cannot see that within. Their king rests without shield against the cold, without fur, without flame, and yet without struggle. The king knows something deeper. He knows that to meet the cold with resistance is to exhaust the body, to tire the spirit. But to meet it with calmness, to breathe with steadiness, is to find a warmth born from within. Imagine lying there beside him, not as a subject, not as a ruler, but simply as a human being. The cold touches your skin, but your breath remains, slow, gentle, unshaken. The air enters. It carries the clarity of winter, a sharpness that clears the mind. The air leaves, carries away tension, leaving only stillness. And so, the chamber is not empty, it is alive with rhythm. Not the rhythm of drums or music, but the simple, endless rhythm of the breath. The night continues. Stars wheel silently above the roof, unseen yet steady. The cold remains unchanged, but in the king's stillness, it loses its power. He breathes, and the breath itself becomes his cover, his blanket, his unseen fire. Time in that chamber seems to soften. Minutes stretch like threads, weaving themselves into hours. The cold, though ever present, feels less like an enemy and more like a quiet guest who lingers at the edge of the room. Inhale. The body expands, filled with strength. Exhale. The body softens, surrendering to rest. This is how he endures. It's not through defiance, not through denial, but through quiet acceptance. The breath carries him, as it carries all who learn to trust it. And so, the legend tells us, the king lay in his chamber, beneath the weight of winter's frost, and breathed as though the world outside were only a dream. Each inhale, a gathering of calm. Each exhale, a release into sleep. The cold remained, but it no longer mattered. The calm breath of the king, steady in the frozen night, was not born in a single moment. It was shaped, as all things are, across years through discipline, through practice, through a lifetime of quiet training. Great rulers were not only masters of kingdoms, they were expected to be masters of themselves. And from childhood, long before a crown was set upon their heads, they were taught this truth, that a king who cannot govern his own body cannot hope to govern his people. Imagine a boy of royal blood, small in stature, standing in a courtyard paved with stone. The air is cool, and the morning light falls gently across his face. He is not yet a ruler. He is not yet strong. But already his lessons begin. Servants bring him food, but he is told to wait. He learns that hunger is not an enemy, but a companion, a reminder that desire can be quieted. In winter, when the palace stones grow icy, he is sent out with little more than a cloak. to walk the grounds and breathe the chill until his body no longer trembles. When he is weary, he is asked to stand longer. When he longs for comfort, he is reminded that comfort cannot always be found. The rhythm of this training is not violent, not cruel, but persistent. Day after day, lesson after lesson, shaping the boy into someone who understands that strength is not always shown by striking, nor by conquering, but by enduring. Picture him now, a little older, perhaps 12 or 13. He sits cross-legged in a quiet chamber, eyes closed, as a tutor whispers guidance. The tutor speaks of stillness, of the way the body resists, of how the mind wanders. The boy shifts at first, restless, his knees aching, his back stiff. But the tutor's voice is calm. Breathe in, breathe out. Notice the air, notice the silence. Hours pass in this manner, and though the boy wishes to leave, he stays. He learns that discomfort fades when attention is steady. He learns that the body is not a master, but a servant to the mind. These early lessons are repeated endlessly until they become second nature. Rising before dawn, bathing in cold water drawn from stone basins, walking barefoot across frost-hardened earth, eating simple food in small portions, never indulgent, always measured. The people may never see these things. When they bow to their king, they see only robes, jewels, crowns, and the symbols of rule. But behind those symbols is a body trained not to falter, a mind trained not to shatter. The palace, in all its grandeur, rests upon the discipline of the one who leads. And so, by the time the boy becomes a man, his training has left deep marks, not scars, but impressions, grooves along which his habits naturally flow. He does not fear the cold, because he has lived with it. He does not shrink from hunger, because he has known it. He does not panic in silence, because he has breathed within it. Consider the mornings of his adulthood. He rises before the first light while the palace is still asleep. He steps into the courtyard, where mist clings to the earth like a veil. The stones are damp with dew, the air damp with chill. He breathes deeply, his chest rising against the sharpness of the hour. No blanket warms him, no fire waits nearby. Only his breath, steady and practiced, carrying him through. This is not merely endurance, it is preparation, for a king's life is filled with demands, with counsel and judgment, with disputes to settle and lands to guard. If he cannot remain steady in the cold, how will he remain steady in the storms of war, or the storms of politics, or the storms of his own heart? The training of kings is not always visible, but it is always present. It hides in the way they sit, without shifting during long councils. It shows in the way they listen patiently to words of praise and words of criticism alike, unmoved by either. It reveals itself most clearly in the stillness of their sleep, when even on a night that would make others shiver, they breathe as calmly as though they lay beneath summer skies. And so, the boy who learned hunger, silence, and cold becomes the man who can lie uncovered in a winter chamber. He has not conquered the cold in any grand battle. Instead, he has befriended it. Through long years of training, the chill has become familiar, not frightening. It has become, in its own way, a teacher. And as the king rests now, his breath steady in the frozen air, the echoes of that training remain. Each inhale recalls the countless mornings of practice. Each exhale carries the quiet strength of discipline shaped over a lifetime. This is the unseen work of royalty. It's not only ruling, not only commanding, but learning, slowly and patiently, to master the self. The palace lies silent, the cold, unbroken. And yet, in that chamber where the king rests without cover, there is a quiet warmth. Not warmth from fire, nor from blanket, but from within, drawn from something as simple and as profound as breath. For those who observed him, the mystery was always the same. How could a man, even a king, lie in such bitter cold without trembling? How could he sleep through frost while guards outside shifted uneasily, their teeth nearly chattering within their helmets? The answer, it is said, was breath. Not the shallow, hurried breath of fear. Not the ragged gasps of one struggling against cold. Breath that was steady, deliberate, trained until it became more than survival, it became mastery. Imagine now the stillness of that chamber. The air is sharp. Each inhalation seems to bite, crisp and unforgiving. But the king does not resist. He does not turn away. Instead, he draws it inward, slow and unhurried. The cold air fills his chest. The lungs expand, the ribs stretch, and with that stretch comes strength. Then the exhale, warm, soft, a release that drifts into the chamber as mist, dissolving almost as soon as it appears. The cycle repeats, inhales, low and measured, all gentle and steady. Each time the air enters as winter's breath and leaves as something transformed, carrying with it the warmth of life itself. There is a secret here, though it is not hidden in spells or charms. It is not magic in the way people often imagine. It is the magic of patience, of rhythm, of the mind guiding the body with quiet authority. Scholars of the court whispered that monks had taught this practice. Sages from distant mountains, men who lived where snow covered the earth for months at a time, had long known this art. They called it a fire within, a flame that did not burn wood, but kindled itself from the lungs, from the heart, from the steady river of breath. The king, they said, had learned from them. He had listened as they spoke of how the breath could carry warmth to every corner of the body, how the mind, when calm, could direct blood and heat where it was needed most, how the simple act of drawing air into the belly, deep and unbroken, could awaken an inner fire that blankets could never match. And so, when others saw only a man lying bare in a freezing room, what truly lay there was something more. A man wrapped in his own breath, a man cradled by the warmth that patience and practice had built within him. Picture yourself now, following the same rhythm. The room may be cold, but you inhale, slowly, deeply, without hurry. The air may feel sharp at first, but as it settles inside, it changes. It becomes softer, gentler, carrying calm through your chest, through your arms, down into your legs. Exhale, a slow release, and with it, a softening, as though a weight has lifted. The cold remains outside, but inside, there is a small fire, steady and quiet, kept alive by nothing more than the breath itself. This is the secret, that the body follows the mind, and the mind follows the breath. If the breath is hurried, the mind grows restless. The breath is calm, the mind grows still. And in stillness, the body finds strength it did not know it possessed. The king breathes this way, not just for warmth, but for clarity. Each inhale is like gathering, each exhale like releasing, gathering strength, releasing fear, gathering calm, releasing tension, over and over until the rhythm itself becomes the blanket that wraps around him. The palace, with its stone walls, cannot take this from him. The frost outside, however sharp, cannot break the cycle. Even time itself seems to yield to this rhythm, stretching into something softer, slower, more forgiving. Think again of the guards outside. Their breath comes fast, uneven, misting the air in short bursts. Shift their weight, stamping their feet against the cold. They do not yet know the secret. To them, breath is simply survival. To their king, it is sovereignty, the quiet command of body and spirit alike. And as the hours pass, the secret reveals itself not as a trick, not as something beyond reach, but as something deeply human. Something anyone might discover, if only they sat with the cold, if only they listened to the rhythm within. Inhale. The chest rises like a mountain against the sky. Exhale. The mist drifts away, like clouds dissolving at dawn. Again and again, until sleep itself is carried upon the breath, as gently as a leaf upon a stream. This was the king's secret. It's not strength of muscle, not weight of crown, but the patient mastery of the simplest act of all, the breath. And it was enough. Enough to warm him, enough to protect him, enough to turn a freezing chamber into a sanctuary of stillness. The measured steps of advisors fell away, leaving only the long-drawn silence of winter. For most, night was a time of escape. They sought warmth in heavy furs, crowded near hearths, whispered prayers against the cold. It was the moment when his training, his patience, and his breath came together in a ritual as familiar as the stars. It began always the same. He would enter his chamber with calm steps, his robe simple, his crown and ornaments set aside. Here, he was not the figure of ceremony, not the image of authority, but simply a man preparing for rest. No golden braziers filled it with heat. No mountain of blankets waited upon his bed. Only stone, bare and silent, holding the day's chill as though it were part of the walls themselves. And yet in this austerity lay intention. The absence of fire was no accident. The lack of covers was not neglect, it was choice. The king would sit first at the edge of the bed, not to voices, not to the world beyond the walls, but to the sound of his own breathing. The night outside might rage with frost, but inside, he created a quiet world of rhythm. Inhale, he would draw the air down, not stopping at the chest, but carrying it deeper into the belly. The mist, dissolving in the air, vanishing almost before it was seen. With each release, a layer of tension slipped away, as though burdens of crown and kingdom were placed gently aside for the night. This was not done in haste. Each breath was like a step upon a long, steady path. Each cycle carried him further into stillness. When the body had softened, when the chill no longer startled, he would lie back upon the bed. The sheets were plain, cold against the skin at first, but the cold was no longer an intruder. It was the landscape upon which his ritual unfolded. The palace dogs curled close, their fur rising against the frost. But in the king's chamber, stillness held sway. The ritual deepened. He would match breath to thought, thought to silence, until even the cold lost its shape. The body, unguarded by cover, learned to trust the rhythm within. It was not recited in chronicles or proclaimed in ceremonies. It was private, unseen, carried out in the same quiet way each evening. Yet it was through this repetition that mastery was born. Night after night, the silence became deeper, the cold less threatening, the breath more certain. Imagine, if you will, the chamber as it stretched into hours, the moon moving slowly across the heavens, shadows shifting upon the stone floor, and through it all, the king lying motionless, his breath steady, his body warm, though the air remained frigid. The ritual was both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary, because it was nothing more than breathing, lying still, closing one's eyes. Extraordinary, because within that simplicity lay the power to endure what few could endure. In time, the practice itself became like a prayer, not words spoken to the heavens, but an offering of stillness. The night was long, but to the king, it did not matter. The ritual carried him as surely as the river carries the leaf. Inhale, gathering calm. Exhale, releasing fear. Over and over, until sleep descended, not as a demand, but as a gentle arrival. And so, the ritual ended each night, not with exhaustion, but with peace. The king lay in uncovered stillness, yet he was not cold. He lay in silence, yet he was not alone. For in his breath he carried warmth. In his discipline, he carried strength. And in his ritual, he carried the quiet fire that no winter could extinguish. The king's ritual was simple, but the place where it unfolded was even simpler. For unlike the chambers of most rulers, filled with tapestries and cushions, with roaring fires and heavy curtains, his room was nearly empty. A space stripped bare, as though silence itself had been invited to take residence there. Imagine stepping into that chamber. At first the cold greets you, immediate and clear. The air is sharp against your skin, carrying no fragrance of smoke or spice, only the faint mineral scent of stone. Your footsteps echo softly, the sound carried away into corners that feel both near and far, as if the chamber itself swallows noise to preserve its stillness. The walls are built of thick blocks, their surfaces uneven, bearing the marks of tools long forgotten. They rise without adornment, without gilding, without the weight of decoration. Now and then, a thin veil of frost gathers where the stone meets the window frame, as though winter has pressed its hand against the wall to remind all within of its presence. The ceiling arches high above, creating shadows that drift across the upper spaces like darkened waves. When the moonlight falls through narrow slits of window, it casts pale, silver streaks across the floor. Glimmering faintly against the cold surface, the bed rests at the center, its frame simple, its coverings plain. There is no mountain of pillows, no heavy silks, only sheets of coarse fabric, cool to the touch, waiting without promise of warmth. There is no firewood stacked in the hearth, for the hearth itself stands unused. Ashes may linger from long ago, but no flame has been tended here for many nights. The scent of smoke, so familiar in most dwellings, is absent. Only the clean, faintly metallic bite of cold air fills the lungs, and so the room feels vast, even when only one man lies within it. The emptiness is not oppressive, not cruel, but deliberate. It strips away distraction, leaving nothing but breath, body, and silence. The emptiness also speaks of choice. The king could summon warmth, could order fires built high, demand furs from across the land, call servants to fill the chamber with comfort. But instead, he chooses absence. He chooses to lie within a room where the only adornment is space itself. This emptiness, strangely, is full of the subtle sounds that only silence allows you to notice. Listen closely. There is the faint sigh of wind pressing against shutters. There is the soft groan of wood beams settling under the weight of the roof. There is the nearly inaudible drip of water melting from frost where stone meets air. These sounds are small, yet in the empty chamber they become companions, each marking the passage of the long winter night. Even the shadows play a role. The flicker of torchlight from a distant corridor may sometimes slip through a crack beneath the door, painting a trembling shape across the floor. At other times, the moonlight alone rules, making every angle of the chamber sharp, every surface pale and austere. In this space, time itself seems slower. Minutes stretch thin, expanding like frost across glass. The silence of the chamber has weight, pressing gently upon the body, not as burden, but as a reminder that here, nothing matters but the rhythm of the breath. It is easy to imagine how others might feel in such a room. Most would shiver, longing for warmth. Some would call for blankets, for fire, for company, but the king remains unmoved. The emptiness of the chamber is his ally, not his enemy. The cold stones steady him. The lack of comfort strengthens him. Silence deepens his stillness, so the empty chamber becomes more than walls and stone. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of the discipline that fills the king's heart, the patience that guides his breath, the quiet endurance that defines his nights. What others would see as absence, he sees as presence. What others would call barren, he calls complete. As he lies there uncovered, his body does not shrink from the cold. His breath fills the room, soft and steady, weaving invisible warmth into the air. Each exhale drifts upward, fading into shadows that cling to the ceiling. Each inhale carries the stillness of the chamber deeper within him.
Outside.
The palace guards shift, stamping their boots against the frozen ground. Their armor clinks faintly, sound that travels inward but dissolves quickly against the weight of the chamber's silence. They do not know what passes within those walls. They see only emptiness, but the king experiences fullness. The chamber, bare and fireless, becomes his sanctuary. It's not because it shelters him from the cold, but because it does not. It allows him to meet winter without barrier, to embrace the chill without fear, to prove night after night that stillness is greater than frost. This, then, is the lesson of the empty chamber, that what we often call nothingness can be the greatest source of strength, that silence can be a companion, that absence can be abundance. And so the king rests, unshaken, as the empty chamber folds around him like a second skin. Not warm, not soft, but steady, enduring, eternal, and quiet as stone beneath the stars. Long before the king ever lay down upon cold stone, long before his nights became woven with stillness, there were those who carried the seed of this knowledge. Not kings, not warriors, not men of wealth, but monks, wanderers, seekers who lived in caves and forests, who found strength not in power, but in silence. Their world was not carved of marble halls or golden thrones. It was simple, shaped by earth and sky, by rivers that whispered through valleys, by winds that cut across mountain peaks, by the endless rhythm of nature that rose and fell, unhurried, unbound. These men and women were students of the unseen. They learned not by conquest, but by surrender, by listening to the breath, by watching the body, by entering the cold instead of fleeing it. To them, the world was not something to be resisted, but something to be accepted. Each season, each storm, each breath of wind was a teacher, and the greatest lessons were often the quietest. Generations passed, and their practices deepened. A monk would sit in the snow for hours, unmoving, until the snow itself began to melt around his body. A hermit would breathe through the cold nights of winter without fire, drawing heat not from wood or coal, but from within. A sage would enter a cave with nothing but silence and emerge weeks later, his eyes carrying the calm of mountains. To outsiders, these acts seemed like miracles. They whispered of secret powers of forbidden arts. But to the monks themselves, it was nothing supernatural. It was the simple mastery of patience, of breath, of surrender to the rhythm of life. The king, though crowned and surrounded by luxury, was a student of this knowledge. He had listened, he had learned. Perhaps as a young man before the crown pressed upon his head, he had wandered into temples or walked with sages. Perhaps he had watched their stillness and asked himself how such quiet people would endure what mighty soldiers could not. What he carried into his chamber each night was not merely discipline, not merely ritual. It was the inheritance of centuries. A thread of wisdom passed from teacher to student, from mountain to palace, from silence to throne. The empty chamber, the uncovered bed, the refusal of fire, none of these were born of pride or stubbornness. They were expressions of knowledge far older than the kingdom itself, knowledge that whispered, "You do not need to conquer the cold, only to welcome it," knowledge that taught, "Your body is not weak, it only waits for your mind to guide it." Knowledge that revealed, within stillness lies a warmth that never fades. When the king breathed in the icy air, he was not simply inhaling the winter night. He was inhaling the lessons of countless generations, each breath a continuation of ancient practice. When he exhaled, it was as though those lessons took form in the mist, disappearing into the air, yet remaining within him always. The monks had spoken of three treasures: patience, breath, and silence. Patience, to wait without resistance, to endure without complaint. Breath, the bridge between body and mind, steady as the tide, infinite as the sky. Silence, the teacher that needs no voice, the space in which all wisdom is heard. The king's chamber became a temple of these three treasures. The cold stone walls became like mountain cliffs, firm and unwavering. The absence of fire became like the discipline of the hermits, who chose not comfort but clarity. And his uncovered body became like the monk upon the snowy peak, bare yet untouched, fragile yet enduring. The ancient knowledge was not meant for the few, was not locked away in sacred texts or hidden in secret caves. It was always there, waiting in the breath, in the stillness, and in the simple act of closing one's eyes and listening to the body. But only those willing to embrace silence could hear it. And so, through his nightly practice, the king became a link in a long chain of seekers. His crown may have set him apart in the eyes of men, but in the eyes of the ancient knowledge, he was no different from the monks who once sat in caves, wrapped not in furs, but in stillness. Each night, as the palace slept and the chamber grew colder, he honored that lineage, not with words, not with ceremony, but with breath. Exhaled, sending it quietly into the world as soft mist dissolving into the air. The knowledge lived on, not in books, not in monuments, but in this simple act. And so the king, though alone in his chamber, was never truly alone. He shared the silence with those who came before, with those who endured the cold, not with fire, but with the warmth born within. And as he drifted into sleep, his breath steady, his body at peace, the ancient knowledge did not vanish. It lingered, carried by the night, waiting for those willing to listen. Waiting, perhaps for you. Belief is a quiet force. It cannot be touched, it cannot be weighed, yet it can move mountains, sustain armies, and carry a single soul through the longest of nights. For the king, who lay uncovered beneath the cold stars, belief was not an ornament of faith, nor a passing thought. It was a foundation, a structure within him, stronger than any stone of the palace walls. Imagine the chamber once more. The frost gathering upon the window frames, the silence stretching between the stone pillars, the air sharp and unyielding. To most, this would be unbearable. Even the guards outside, armored and wrapped, trembled as the winter gnawed at them. But the king, unshielded, remained still. Not because the cold had spared him, but because his mind refused to bow before it. Belief can shape the body. When one believes deeply that the cold is not an enemy, the body begins to listen. The heart beats steadily, not racing with panic. The breath flows smoothly, not caught in shallow gasps. The muscles soften instead of shivering in fear. And in that softness, warmth rises. The king's belief was not naive. He did not imagine himself invincible, nor did he deny the reality of winter. He knew the cold could take life. He had seen frost claim peasants in the fields, had seen soldiers fall during bitter campaigns. But where others saw only threat, he saw something different. He saw a teacher, and like all good students, he trusted the lesson. Belief for him was not loud. It was not shouted in the halls, nor carved into proclamations. It was silent, like the steady flame of a single candle. It burned within, unseen by most, but always present. It was this flame that allowed him to close his eyes without covers, to surrender himself to the night with trust instead of fear. The origin of his belief may have come from many places. Perhaps from childhood, when he was told stories of heroes who endured impossible trials, who survived deserts without water or seas without sail. Perhaps from religion, whispered prayers that spoke of strength beyond the body, of spirit guiding flesh. Perhaps from the monks who had taught him that the mind could command the body if only one trusted deeply enough. But wherever it began, his belief grew until it became more than comforted, became certainty. Each night he lay uncovered, the belief did not falter. And with each night endured, the belief grew stronger. It was a circle, self-sustaining, like the rhythm of breath. Belief feeding endurance, endurance feeding belief. There is something soothing about such certainty. It does not shout, it does not demand. It simply rests, quiet and unshaken. It says, "You are safe, even when the world feels dangerous." It says, "You are whole, even when the body feels fragile." It says, "Trust the stillness, for it will carry you further than fear ever could." And so the king's nights were not battles. They were not struggles against the cold. They were moments of surrender. Not surrender to weakness, but surrender to trust. Trusted himself, trusted the breath, trusted the lessons of silence, and above all, trusted that his body could follow his mind. For those who watched him from afar, this seemed impossible. The guards whispered to one another, "How can he endure?" Advisors shook their heads. "Surely he will grow ill." Visitors spread rumors. There must be sorcery at play. Yet the truth was simpler, gentler, quieter. It was belief pure, steady belief that kept him warm. Even now, centuries later, when we recall his story, it is not only the image of a king on a cold stone bed that lingers. It is the deeper lesson that belief shapes reality, that what we hold within can change how we experience the world without. That sometimes the difference between trembling and resting is not the thickness of a blanket, but the strength of the mind's conviction. As you listen, you may feel the same possibility within yourself. The air around you may be cool, or warm, or still. But what matters is not the temperature aid, is the trust you carry. Trust that your body knows how to rest. Trust that your breath knows how to guide you. Trust that even in silence, you are safe. The king believed, and belief became warmth. You too can believe. Not in crowns or legends, but in something even simpler. In your own breath. In your own stillness. In the quiet fire that flickers within you, waiting to be trusted. And as that belief settles gently upon you, like snow upon the earth, you may find your body easing, your breath slowing, your mind softening. Just as the king did long ago, beneath the frozen stars. A mountain does not hurry, does not tremble when storms arrive, nor does it chase away the winds. It stands silent and immovable, watching centuries pass like moments. Snow gathers upon its peaks, rains carve into its slopes, and yet the mountain remains, steady, enduring, unshaken. The king's mind was like this. It was not born that wet was shaped, layer by layer. the way stone is formed over time. Through trials, through discipline, through nights spent alone in silence, his mind grew solid. And when the freezing air of winter pressed against him, when shadows lengthened across the palace walls, his mind did not flinch. It remained like the mountain, firm, still rooted. Imagine again his chamber. The walls are heavy with frost, their surfaces pale in the dim torchlight. The air is sharp, carrying the faint bite of snow drifting from distant fields. Any ordinary man would feel the cold biting into his skin, whispering of weakness, urging him to shiver. But the king's mind held steady. He did not argue with the cold, did not resist it, nor did he invite it. He simply let it be, the way a mountain allows the clouds to pass across its summit. This steadiness did not mean the absence of thought. Rather, it was thought held in balance, like stones carefully stacked into a cairn. Each thought came, lingered, then drifted away, leaving no disturbance behind. The king had trained himself to let his mind settle, to sink into stillness like a stone sinking gently into a clear pool. And when the mind is still, the body follows. Shivering slows, breath deepens. Warmth rises, not from outside, but from within. The mountain does not seek warmth, and yet it holds warmth deep inside its stone heart. So too did the king. Beneath the surface of his skin, beneath the sharp touch of winter, there was a steady fire, quiet and enduring. Not a blaze that roared, but an ember that never faded. And that ember was guarded by the calm of his mind. Soldiers had seen him this way. On long campaigns, when nights turned bitter and men struggled to keep their fires alive, the king would sit apart, his cloak thin, his posture steady. While others cursed the frost and huddled together, he seemed untouched, as if he were carved from stone. To them, it was both unnerving and inspiring. They whispered that no enemy could break a man who did not yield even to winter. But the truth was simpler. He was not resisting the cold. He was accepting it. He understood that the mountain does not drive away the snow. It simply allows the snow to rest upon its slopes, knowing it cannot harm the stone beneath. The king's mind was the same. He let the cold rest upon him like snow upon the mountain. And in that acceptance, he was free. Centuries later, people still wondered how he endured. Some said it was the training of sages. Some said it was the fire of faith. But perhaps the clearest answer lies in the image of the mountain. When you imagine its vastness, its stillness, you can begin to feel what he felt. The quiet strength of knowing that nothing, not even winter, can shake what is rooted deep within. And so his nights became less about survival and more about communion. He was not fighting against the cold, but sitting with it. Not seeking escape, but resting within it. The chamber became like the side of a mountain, silent and patient. The bed became like the stone ledge of a cliff, firm and grounding. And his mind, steady as the peak above, became a place where no wind, no storm, no frost could truly enter. This is the lesson that lingers. That a mind can be like a mountain calm, unmoved, enduring. That storms will come, but they will pass. That winter will arrive, but it will fade. And beneath it all, if the mind remains steady, the body will follow. Perhaps as you listen now, you too can imagine this mountain within yourself. Feel the weight of stillness settling like stone. Feel the breath flowing like wind across its slopes. Each thought, each worry, each flicker of restlessness, passing like clouds, leaving no mark upon the summit. The mountain waits within you, as it waited within the king, and as he slept, uncovered beneath the frost. It was not the palace that protected him, nor the blankets he refused to use. It was the mountain within his mind, silent, unyielding, eternal, that cradled him through the night. Comfort, for most people, is something sought outside the self. It is found in thick blankets, in glowing fires, in warm food, and soft beds. It is in the closing of shutters against the night, in the piling of furs upon weary shoulders, in the small luxuries that guard against discomfort. But for the king, who lay uncovered in the cold chamber, comfort was something very different. It was not given by objects. It was cultivated from within. Imagine once again the silent palace. Beyond the heavy doors, courtiers and servants wrapped themselves tightly, pulling layers around their bodies. They whispered about the king, puzzled by his refusal to do the same. To them, comfort was protection. It was escape from the harshness of the world. But the king had learned another path. He understood that true comfort does not mean escaping the cold, it means no longer fearing it. His mastery of comfort began with small choices. He learned to sit quietly in the early mornings, when frost lingered upon the stone floors. Instead of rushing toward warmth, he would breathe deeply, allowing the body to feel the sharp air, to grow familiar with it. He discovered that when the body is not startled, when it does not tense against sensation, discomfort loses its power. And slowly, what had once seemed unbearable became simply another part of the day. Think of the way a river moves across rocks. The rocks do not resist. They allow the water to flow, and in time, the rough edges are smoothed. So too did the king's body learn not to resist the cold. He let it flow over him like water, softening his fear, smoothing his unease, until even in the coldest nights, he could rest without struggle. Comfort, he realized, was not about softness, but about stillness. It was not in covering the body, but in uncovering the mind from its restlessness. Once the mind was calm, the body followed. And in this way, the king discovered a secret. The deepest comfort does not come from warmth itself, but from peace. The people around him could not understand. Guards trembled in their posts, their teeth chattering as they clutched their cloaks tighter. Servants lit fires in every corner of their rooms, desperate to keep the chill at bay. Yet the king slept without covers, his breath steady, his body at ease. To them, it seemed impossible, almost inhuman. But to the king, it was simply mastery not of objects, but of himself. He often thought of comfort as a conversation. When most people feel cold, the body shouts in alarm. The mind answers with panic. I must escape. I must cover myself. I must run from this discomfort. But the king listened differently. When the body whispered, "It is cold," he replied gently, "Yes, it is. And that is all." No panic, no flight. Only acceptance. In that acceptance, comfort emerged. Comfort became not the absence of hardship, but the harmony with it. The stone beneath him was hard, yet he found rest upon it. The air was icy, yet his breath warmed it as it entered his chest. The silence was vast, yet it cradled him like a lullaby. What others avoided, he embraced. What others feared, he befriended. And in this way, the king mastered the art of comfort. This mastery was not only for himself, it shaped the way he ruled. A king who had learned to rest in discomfort was a king who could endure the hardships of war, famine, or uncertainty without losing clarity. His people looked to him and saw not only wealth or power, but steadiness. For if their ruler could sleep peacefully through the coldest night, then perhaps they too could face their own trials with courage. There is something timeless in this lesson. Even now, as you listen, you may feel the faint stirrings of this truth within yourself, that comfort need not be bought or built, that it may rise softly from within when you stop resisting what surrounds you, when you breathe deeply and let the body soften, when you allow the air, whatever its temperature, to simply be. The king's uncovered sleep was not a display of pride, nor a rejection of luxury. It was a reminder that comfort is not found in how much we possess, but in how deeply we can rest within ourselves. That the true blanket is the mind's calm. The true fire is the breath's rhythm. The true bed is the stillness we allow. And so each night, when the palace grew silent and frost gathered thick upon the stones, the king lay down not to fight the cold, but to welcome it. He welcomed the hardness of stone, the sharpness of air, the vastness of silence, and in welcoming them, he transformed them. Hardness became grounding, coldness became clarity, silence became comfort. As you lie here now, you can feel the same possibility. The bed beneath you may be firm or soft, the air cool or warm, but within you rests the same power, the ability to release resistance, to soften, to find comfort in stillness, to let go of the chase for perfect warmth, perfect softness, perfect silence, and instead to trust what already surrounds you. This was the mastery of the king, and it can be your mastery too. Outside the king's chamber, The night stretched endlessly. The courtyard lay silent, its stones glazed with frost, each tile shining faintly beneath the pale light of the moon. The air was sharp, so sharp it seemed to cut against the skin, slipping beneath armor, creeping through fabric, settling heavy into the bones of those who stood watch. And there, at the edges of the palace walls, the guards kept their posts. They were strong men, chosen for their endurance, trained for battle, for long marches, for discipline, yet even they could not escape the winter's grip. Their armor, so useful in war, now became a burden, the metal leaching heat from their bodies. Their cloaks, though thick, could not fully shield them from the bitter wind that whistled through the corridors of stone. They shifted from foot to foot, stamping lightly upon the frozen ground. Not out of restlessness, but out of need, each movement an attempt to stir life back into stiffening limbs. From time to time, their breath rose in thick clouds, misting before their faces, only to vanish into the dark. Each exhale was a reminder of the cold, each inhale a test of will. Their hands tightened on their spears, partly from discipline, partly to disguise the tremors that ran through their fingers. And yet, just beyond the heavy doors, their king slept uncovered. No blanket, no fire, only stillness. To the guards, it was a mystery they could not solve. They envied him, feared for him, and admired him all at once. They whispered to one another in hushed tones, careful not to disturb the silence of the night. "How does he endure?" one murmured, his teeth chattering despite his attempt to steady them. "Surely he must have hidden fires, or charms," another replied, though the doubt was plain in his voice. And yet each night they saw the same thing, the king entering his chamber with calm steps, lying upon the bare bed and letting sleep take him as though the cold were no more than a gentle breeze. The guards could not imitate him. When they tried to steady themselves, when they tried to breathe as they imagined he did, their own bodies betrayed them. Shivers shook their frames. Numbness settled in their fingers and toes. And always the sharp edge of winter pressed deeper, reminding them that they were only men, bound by flesh and weakness. Still, their king was flesh too. He was no statue of stone, no immortal figure untouched by the world, and this made his endurance all the more bewildering. For while they shivered and strained, he seemed at peace. His stillness was not defiance, not arrogance. It was as if he had found a quietness that insulated him more surely than any cloak ever could. The guards often wondered if his strength might reach them, if by standing near his chamber they too could borrow some fragment of his calm. Sometimes in the deepest hours of the night, they felt it faintly in an atmosphere that drifted outward, soft and invisible. It was not heat, not something they could grasp, but a presence, a reminder that stillness itself could be a shield. And though their bodies trembled, their spirits steadied, if only for a moment. There is something telling in this contrast. The soldiers, armored and wrapped, could not conquer the cold. But the king, uncovered, lay in ease. It was not clothing or armor that made the difference. It was the mind and the mastery of comfort he had cultivated. The guards did not lack strength of body, but they lacked what their king possessed, the ability to meet the cold not with resistance, but with quiet acceptance. As the night deepened, the guards continued their vigil. Their feet ached, their fingers numbed, their breaths grew heavy. Yet within the chamber, the king's breathing was steady, soft, unbroken, like the rhythm of a tide against the shore. And in that rhythm, perhaps unknowingly, the guards found their own endurance. Each time they doubted, they reminded themselves, if our king can rest, then we too can stand. The legend of the shivering guards spread in whispers. Travelers spoke of the strange palace where the ruler lay bare to the frost, while his men outside struggled against the cold. It became a story of contrasts, the trembling of many and the stillness of one. And in that contrast, the king's quiet strength grew brighter, like a candle in endless dark. Even now, when the tale is told, it is not only the king who is remembered. The guards, too, have their place in the story. They remind us of what is ordinary, what is human, the body that trembles, the breath that quickens, the longing for warmth. And beside them, the king shows what is possible, the mind that steadies, the breath that calms, the comfort that comes, not from furs or fire, but from within. Perhaps, As you listen, you can feel both sides within yourself. The shivering guard, anxious for warmth, restless against the cold. The quiet king, steady in his stillness, resting without fear. Both are real. Both are human. But with each breath, you may lean a little closer to the stillness, a little closer to the comfort, till the shivering softens, until the mind becomes calm. And in that calm, perhaps you will discover, as the king did, that the truest guard is not outside the chamber at all, but within. A guard made of silence, breath, and belief. A guard that keeps you steady, even through the coldest of nights. Over time, what began as a private practice of the king became something far greater. At first, it was simply his way of finding peace, his way of mastering comfort, of resting without need for fire or cover. But as the nights passed, and as the palace continued to whisper of his strange habit, the meaning grew. What the king did in silence soon became a symbol, a quiet flame of strength that spread through the entire kingdom. The people began to speak of it in the markets, in the taverns, in the courtyards of their homes. They told one another, "Our king does not hide from the cold. He rests upon stone, uncovered, and yet he sleeps in peace." For them, it was not merely a tale of endurance. It was a story of resilience, of unshakable spirit. It was proof that strength was not always shown in battle, not always displayed with swords or armies, but sometimes in stillness, in silence, in the way one met hardship without fear. Children grew up hearing the story, wide-eyed beneath the warmth of their own blankets. They imagined the great chamber of stone, the king lying without cover, and they whispered to themselves before sleep, "If the king can rest without fear, then perhaps I too can be brave." And in this way, the practice that began as one man's quiet choice became a lesson carried into the hearts of many. The king himself did not speak of it. He never proclaimed his way as law, never demanded that others follow. He simply lived it, night after night, in silence. And yet that silence was louder than any decree, because it was not forced, it was trusted. It was not imposed, it was witnessed. And in that witnessing, the people found inspiration. His advisors, at first troubled, came to see it as a sign of something greater. Where once they worried for his health, now they recognized it as a demonstration of the very quality that set him apart. The ability to face what others fled from, and to remain calm in its presence. It was not just a refusal of blanket sit, it was a refusal of fear. It was a reminder that true leadership is not always about commanding armies, but about embodying a strength that others cannot help but follow. Even the guards, shivering in their armor, began to hold themselves differently. Though their bodies trembled, they carried the knowledge that their king endured more than they did, and did so with grace. It gave them pride to stand their posts, pride to guard the chamber where such strength was displayed. Their shivering no longer felt like weakness, but like participation in a greater story. For they, too, were part of the legend of the king who slept without covers. The kingdom began to adopt the lesson in their own quiet ways. Farmers in the fields, working through harsh winters, told themselves, "The king sleeps in frost without fear, so I can endure the cold of this morning." Merchants on the road, traveling long miles beneath icy skies, whispered, "The king rests upon stone without complaint, so I can carry my burdens with steady breath." Mothers soothed their children, saying, "Do not be afraid of the night's chill. Remember, the king himself sleeps peacefully, and so too shall you." The act became more than survival. It became a shared symbol, a banner not made of fabric or ink, but of story and spirit. The king had not sought this. He had only sought stillness for himself, but in doing so he gave his people something far greater, the belief that strength could be quiet, that courage could be gentle, that resilience could live not in battle cries, but in peaceful sleep. And so, the story spread beyond the kingdom's borders. Travelers carried it into distant lands. He spoke of a ruler unlike others, one who wore no armor at night, one who needed no fire to find rest, one who faced the cold, not as an enemy but as a companion. To some, it sounded like myth, to others, like wisdom. But to all who heard it, the image lingered. A king upon stone, breath steady, body still, untouched by fear. What makes a symbol powerful is not its size, but its resonance. And this symbol resonated because it spoke to something universal. All people, no matter where they live, know the feeling of discomfort. All people know fear and restlessness and longing for warmth. And so all people could recognize the beauty in the king's stillness. It was not about frost or blankets or stone. It was about meeting what is difficult with grace, about resting in the midst of hardship, about finding peace when the world seems unkind. In the quiet chamber, the king never thought of these things. He did not lie awake imagining the stories that spread in his name. He simply lay down, uncovered, breathing deeply, welcoming the cold, embracing the silence. And yet, in doing so, he became more than a man. He became a symbol. It's not a symbol carved in stone, not a symbol written in books, but a living one, renewed each night with every steady breath. Even now, long after those nights have passed into legend, the story continues. It continues not because of the details of one man's life, but because of the lesson hidden within. That strength does not always roar. That courage does not always strike. That resilience does not always conquer. Sometimes strength is as simple as stillness. Sometimes courage is as gentle as breath. Sometimes resilience is as quiet as sleep. And perhaps, as you rest here tonight, you can carry that same symbol within yourself. You do not need to be a king. You do not need to sleep upon stone. You need only to remember that strength can be quiet, that peace can be found within, that your breath itself can be your blanket. And in that remembering, you too may become a symbol of strength only to yourself. In this moment, in this night, as you drift softly towards sleep, stories are like rivers. They begin quietly, perhaps as a single spring bubbling from the earth, almost unnoticed. But as they flow, they gather, they grow, they travel. They carry with them pieces of land, fragments of memory, the voices of those who retell them. And so it was with the story of the king who slept without covers in the frost. At first it was spoken only within palace walls. The guards who shivered at their posts murmured it to one another, shaking their heads in disbelief. The advisors, baffled and awed, repeated it in hushed voices as they walked the echoing corridors. The servants who tended the silent halls carried the tale back to their families, adding small details: the way the torches dimmed, the way frost clung to the stone floors, the way the king's breath rose in the darkness like mist. Soon, the story moved beyond the palace gates. Merchants heard it while delivering grain. Priests and monks reflected on it in the quiet of their cloisters, interpreting it as a lesson of discipline, of spirit over flesh. And then the tale left the city altogether, carried by travelers whose lives were shaped by the road. A farmer traveling to the market told it to another, who journeyed further still. A pilgrim whispered it at a fireside, two companions who had never seen the king's land. A trader, resting at a distant inn, spoke of the king who defied the cold with nothing. But stillness and the innkeeper, enchanted, passed the story to the next weary traveler. In this way, the story did what all great stories do. It moved, slow but unstoppable, carried by human voices across valleys, over rivers, through mountain passes, from village to village, from kingdom to kingdom. Each place gave the story its own shape. In some lands, they said the king was chosen by heaven, that frost itself bent to his will. In others, they imagined him as a monk king, steeped in secret wisdom from the east, his body trained to resist winter's test. Elsewhere, they believed it was not discipline, but faith, that he prayed so deeply each night that even the cold dared not disturb his sleep. And still others whispered that perhaps it was not about the king at all, but about the lesson. That true warmth is born not of fire or cloth, but of the spirit. The story shifted like the wind, and yet at its core, it remained the same. A man, a king, alone in his chamber, uncovered, unshaken, resting through the bitter frost, as though it were the gentlest of nights. Imagine for a moment how such whispers must have sounded. In a village where winters were long and cruel, families gathered around dim fires, listening to a traveler speak of the king, who embraced the cold as if it were a friend. The children leaned closer, eyes wide, blankets clutched around their shoulders. The elders nodded slowly, perhaps remembering their own hardships, perhaps wondering if such strength could live within themselves. The story offered comfort, not through spectacle, but through stillness. It suggested that even in the harshest conditions, peace could be found. In another place, perhaps in a bustling port where sailors prepared to cross treacherous seas, the story was told differently. Here the king was a symbol of endurance against nature's fury. And though they faced not frost but waves, the lesson was the same: to endure without trembling, to find calm where others found fear. Step by step, whisper by whisper, the story became part of the world's fabric. No scroll recorded its beginning, no chronicler wrote it in gilded ink. It survived not because it was commanded, because it was carried, because people found in it something worth remembering, something worth repeating, something worth passing along. And so, across lands, divided by language, by distance, by custom, the story of the king remained. It was not always the same king. It was not always the same chamber of stone. The mind, unshaken, endured like a flame shielded from the wind. This is how legends are born. Not in sudden triumph, not in grand proclamations, but in the quiet persistence of memory. A story told softly, over and over, until it belongs not to one man, but to everyone who hears it. Perhaps you, listening now, can imagine yourself among those who once heard the whispers. A traveler pausing at a roadside inn, warming your hands by a faint fire, while someone beside you recounts the tale. The image of the king forming in your mind, lying without covers beneath the frozen stars. You hear it, you carry it, and perhaps without realizing, you share it again in time. And so the whispers continue. They drift across centuries as they once drifted across lands. They arrive here, in this very moment, reaching your ears as softly as the night wind. The story is still alive because you are hearing it now, because it still carries the same quiet promise, that even in cold, there can be peace, that even in hardship, there can be stillness, that even in silence, there can be strength. Legends do not arrive all at once. They grow slowly, steadily like ivy, climbing the walls of an old stone palace. At first, they cling in small patches, almost unnoticed. But as seasons pass, the ivy spreads, covering more and more of the surface, till one day the building seems clothed in green, transformed by the quiet persistence of time. So it was with the story of the king. What began as whispers within his own halls, then carried across roads and rivers, became something larger, something that no longer belonged only to those who had seen him or served him. In villages, the king became a figure of quiet endurance. Mothers told their children that he could sleep through frost because his heart burned like a hidden ember, never extinguished by the night. They spoke of him not only as a ruler of lands, but as a ruler of himself. Someone whose greatest victory was not over enemies, but over fear. For the people who heard this, the story became a gentle reminder. If a king could conquer discomfort, then perhaps they too, it could endure their own hardships, whether it was hunger, long winters, or the endless toil of labor. In courts of nobility, the story took on another shape. They spoke of discipline, of mastery, of secrets known only to rulers and sages. The king was imagined as one who had touched hidden knowledge, who had unlocked mysteries of body and spirit that set him apart from common men. For them, the tale was less about comfort and more about power, the subtle, commanding strength of a man who needed no fire, no blanket, no servant to ease his nights. In their retellings, the chamber was not a place of silence but a throne of discipline, where the king reigned not only by day, but also by night, mastering himself as surely as he mastered his court. Some said he was not truly human at all, but half divine, blessed by the gods of winter. They imagined frost that parted at his touch, snowflakes that melted before reaching his skin. Others said he had trained with monks in hidden mountains, learning breathing arts that gave him mastery over the elements. Still others whispered that it was faith alone, a prayer so deep that even nature bent before it. Each version grew, branching and multiplying, weaving new details into the fabric of the tale. And though they differed, though some made him holy, others wise, and others simply strong, they all shared the same image. A king lying down beneath frozen stars, breath steady, body still, untouched by fear, untouched by cold. Legends grow not because they are perfectly told, but because they are told again and again. Each voice that speaks them adds a thread, and those threads together form a tapestry that is richer than any single truth. In time, the legend of the king was no longer a simple story about how one man slept. It became a mirror reflecting the hopes and values of those who told it. For some, it was a tale of strength. For others, a mystery of the spirit. For others still, a reminder of endurance in the face of hardship. And because it could mean many things, it could live in many hearts. That is how legends survive, not in rigid facts, but in flexible meaning, in the way they bend and shift to fit the listener's needs. Imagine how it must have sounded, carried into yet another century. A traveler stopping in a distant village, gathering with strangers around a low fire, telling the tale of the king who lay uncovered in winter's grasp. The listeners did not ask if the story was true. They did not demand proof. They let the image settle into their minds, soft and steady, the way snow settles upon fields. And in that silence, belief took root. The legend no longer belonged to time. It no longer belonged to place. It no longer even belonged to the king himself. It belonged to everyone who needed it. To every child who feared the dark. To every laborer who braved the cold dawn. To every wanderer far from home. The legend became a companion, a quiet presence, a reminder that stillness could be stronger than storm, that peace could be deeper than fear. And as the centuries passed, the king who once lay uncovered in his chamber became more than a man of history. He became a figure of memory, a figure of dream, a figure of night itself. His story was not written in books, nor carved in stone, yet it endured, because it lived in whispers, because it lived in breath, because it lived in the hearts of those who needed to believe that even the harshest winter could be met with calm. Perhaps as you listen now, you too can feel the slow growth of this legend within you. Like ivy creeping across a wall, like snow covering a field, like breath rising into still air. It spreads quietly, gently, without force. And in this spreading, it becomes yours as well. A story not only about a king long gone, but about the strength that lingers in silence, about the fire that rests within breath, about the peace that waits in every still night. Stillness is a rare gift. In a world of endless movement, markets bustling with trade, armies marching across fields, bells ringing to mark the hours, true stillness is seldom found. And yet, it was this stillness that the king discovered. This stillness that he embraced, and this stillness that became his greatest gift. Not only to himself, but to those who heard his story. When he lay uncovered in his chamber, the cold did not vanish, the frost did not soften. The world outside remained the same sharp winds sweeping across the hills, snow settling upon roofs, breath turning white in the air. But inside, within himself, there was a quiet that no winter could disturb. A quiet deeper than silence. A stillness that steadied his body, calmed his breath, and carried him into sleep as gently as a river carries fallen leaves. This was not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of presence. The stillness of being fully there, breathing, resting, unafraid. And though he never spoke of it, though he never tried to teach it, his people felt it through the story that spread. For when they imagined the king at rest, they too tasted a little of that stillness. They too felt the possibility of peace, even in a world that was often restless. Think of a village, far from the palace, where winter nights were long and heavy. A family gathers in their small home, the fire burning low, children huddled together beneath rough blankets. Someone tells the story of the king who sleeps without covers, who welcomes the frost with calm breath. As the words settle into the room, the children close their eyes. The fire crackles softly, and for a moment, the weight of hardship feels lighter. The story brings stillness, and that stillness brings comfort. Think of a soldier, weary from a long march, sitting beneath the stars. His armor is cold against his skin. His body aches. His mind is restless with worry. And yet, he remembers the tale, that his king lies upon stone, uncovered, unmoved. He closes his eyes, slows his breathing, and in that simple act, he feels a little of that stillness, a little of that strength. The gift is not the absence of hardship, but the presence of calm within it. Think of a traveler, crossing distant mountains, snow gathering at their feet. The path is long, the night is cold, but around the fire someone recalls the king's rest. The traveler listens, and though their own body still trembles, they carry within them a new thought. If stillness can be found in frost, then perhaps it can be found anywhere. And with that thought, they endure. The gift of stillness is not given in gold or jewels. It does not shine. It does not weigh heavy in the hand. It moves quietly, passed not by decree, but by story, by memory, by breath. It cannot be forced, but it can be felt. And once felt, it lingers, like a gentle warmth beneath the skin. The king never sought to give this gift. He sought only to rest. But true gifts are often like this, unintended, unannounced, yet deeply needed. His stillness became a kind of inheritance for his people, one that asked for nothing in return. As the legend grew, that inheritance spread far beyond his borders, offered freely to all who heard the tale. Imagine, for a moment, receiving that gift yourself. You do not need to lie upon stone, nor face the frost of an ancient palace. You need only to close your eyes, to notice your breath, rising, falling, steady as the tide. To let the noise of the day settle, like dust falling to the floor. To let your body grow heavy, as though cradled by the earth itself. And in that gentle surrender, you too receive the same gift that once cradled the king, the gift of stillness. Stillness teaches that warmth is not always fire, that comfort is not always fabric, that peace is not always found by changing the world outside, but by softening the world within. It teaches that in every breath, in every pause, there is a doorway into quiet. And that doorway is always waiting, no matter where you are, no matter how cold the night may be. The king discovered this doorway in his own way, through discipline, through presence, through his nightly ritual of lying down in frost. But the gift he left is not bound to his chamber, nor to his time. It is bound to the simple truth that stillness is possible, that you too can find it, that you too can rest in it, that even now as you listen, the gift of stillness is already near, already here, already waiting within your breath. And so, across the centuries, the gift continues, passed through whispers, carried in stories, unfolding in moments of quiet reflection. It is a gift that does not fade, because it is not tied to one man, nor to one legend. It is tied to something deeper, something timeless. The capacity of the human heart to rest, the capacity of the human mind to become steady, the capacity of the human spirit to be like a mountain, calm, unmoved, at peace. This was and remains the true gift of the king, not the image of his chamber, nor the mystery of his strength, but the stillness that flowed outward from him, like ripples from a stone dropped into water, ripples that spread across lands, across generations, across centuries, until at last they reach you, here, now, in this quiet moment. The gift of stillness is yours. Breathe it in, let it settle, and know that in this, you share the same inheritance as all who have ever heard the legend. Calm does not come all at once. It is not forced nor demanded. It arrives the way twilight does, softly, gradually, almost unnoticed until the sky itself has changed. And when calm arrives, the body follows. This was the secret the king carried, though he never named it, never proclaimed it. When he lay upon stone, uncovered, he did not command his body to obey him. He did not tense against the cold. He did not harden himself like iron. Instead, he softened. He allowed calm to guide him, and the body in turn obeyed. Breath by breath, calm drew the body inward, into safety, into stillness. And though the air was sharp, though frost clung to the edges of stone, his body did not fight. It listened, it surrendered, it rested. Think of the body as a great vessel, always waiting to be steered. Most nights it is tossed by winds, the winds of thought, of worry, of memory, of plans not yet fulfilled. The body tenses, the muscles coil, the chest rises too quickly, and sleep drifts further away. But when calm leads, the vessel finds its course. The wind's quiet, the water's still, and the body, guided by something deeper than effort, begins to settle. The king's calm was not a miracle. It was not beyond human reach. It was the same calm that you now hold within yourself. It begins with the breath. One breath drawn in, released slowly. Another breath felt fully, without rushing. Each breath becomes an anchor, drawing the body downward, downward, into rest. Imagine the way snow falls upon the earth. Each flake is light, delicate, small, and yet together they cover forests, fields, mountains. Calm is like this. Each breath is a flake, falling gently, settling softly. And with enough breaths, the body is covered, blanketed, stilled. Now imagine lying down as the king once did. The chamber is cold, the air unmoving, but you let calm guide you. You do not resist. You do not struggle. Your breath deepens, your heart slows, your muscles soften. The body follows where calm leads, begins to feel heavier, as though sinking into the bed. The weight of the world loosens, slipping from your shoulders, your chest, your hands. Calm does not hurry. It takes its time, seeps into every corner of the body, into the face, where tension lingers behind the eyes. Into the jaw, which clenches with the words left unspoken. Into the shoulders, burdened by hours of labor. Into the hands, curled from effort. Into the legs, restless with movement. One by one, calm loosens them, unties them, releases them. And as the body loosens, the mind loosens too. Thoughts grow slower, softer, less sharp. They arrive like echoes instead of storms. They drift like clouds instead of lightning. And soon, the mind, like the body, follows where calm leads toward. Rest, toward silence, toward sleep. The king understood this, even if he never spoke it. He lived it. Night after night, he entrusted his body to calm. And the body, faithful to the rhythm, obeyed. It no longer shivered against frost. It no longer pleaded for fire. It learned to be at peace in the absence of comfort. It learned to rest even in winter's breath. This is the same lesson you can carry now. Calm leads, the body follows. You do not need to force the body into stillness. You do not need to command it with will or strength. You need only to invite calm to breathe it in, to allow it to unfold. The body will listen. The body will follow. Imagine, once more, the great vessel upon water. Without calm, it is pushed this way and that, never finding its way. But with calm, the sails loosen, the winds ease, and the vessel glides, untroubled, across the surface. So it is with your body. So it is with your rest. The king's gift was not that he conquered cold. It was that he allowed calm to lead, and his body followed into peace. And now, as you rest, you too may follow. For calm is already here, waiting within your breath, ready to guide you into the night. Let it lead. Let the body follow. And let yourself be carried gently toward sleep. Centuries have passed since that king lay down upon cold stone, resting without blanket, without fire, without fear. And yet his quiet ritual has not been forgotten. It lingers like a faint echo carried through time. People wonder still, ask, across generations, how could he endure? What did he know that we have lost? Such questions are not loud. They are not shouted from towers or written in bold proclamations. They come softly, in whispers, in moments of reflection, at the hearth of a small house, in the corner of a monastery, in the quiet halls of learning. The questions return again and again, as though history itself cannot let go. Some said the king's secret was meditation. They imagined him closing his eyes, retreating into stillness, letting the world outside fade. They believed he discovered within that stillness a warmth greater than any blanket, a fire untouched by wood or flame. Others said it was prayer. They pictured him whispering words into the silence, words not meant for others but for himself, or perhaps for something greater. They believed that faith itself built an unseen shelter, protecting him from the cold as surely as stone walls protected him from enemies. Still others claimed it was destiny, that he was born with a gift, something beyond the reach of ordinary men and women. They said he carried within him a strength inherited from ancestors or granted by the heavens. And in that strength, frost became harmless, nights became gentle, sleep became unshaken. The questions never end with answers. Even as one story is told, another rises. Generations keep asking, was it discipline or was it faith? Was it technique or was it spirit? Was it human effort or something beyond? Imagine a village long after the king's reign is ended. The people gather on a winter night, the wind moving outside, the fire inside burning low. An elder tells the story of the king who slept without covers. Children listen wide-eyed, shivering even though they sit close to the flames. They ask their own questions. Did he never grow cold? Did he never long for warmth? Did he never wake in the night? And the elder only smiles, for the answers are not simple. The elder repeats what has been said before and what will be said again. Calm leads the body, and the body follows. The king trusted calm, and calm never failed him. Later, in monasteries far from that village, monks would wonder the same. In their quiet chambers, where nights were long and silence was deep, they reflected on the story. They debated not with anger, but with curiosity. One said it was discipline the body trained until it no longer trembled. Another said it was faith a heart believing until the body obeyed. And another said it was breath itself, nothing more, nothing less. The questions moved from mouth to mouth, never resolved, never concluded. Even in royal courts centuries later, nobles would recall the tale. A ruler might mention it while planning winter hunts or enduring a bitter season. Advisors might speak of the king as a symbol, a leader whose strength was so complete that not even cold could defeat him. But still, beneath the admiration, the question remained. How? Why? What was the true secret? You may notice now that such questions live not only in history, but in us. For we to wonder, how do we endure our own nights, our own winters, our own long hours of uncertainty? Do we conquer them through discipline? Do we soften them through faith? Do we survive them through patience, or through something simpler, something as simple as breath? Questions do not need quick answers. They are companions, not problems to be solved. They travel with us through time, as they traveled with those before us. Each generation receives them, holds them for a while, and passes them on. And perhaps this is the true meaning of the king's legend, not the cold, not the stone, not the absence of blankets, but the mystery it leaves behind. A mystery that invites us to pause, to reflect, to ask quietly, what is it that allows a human being to find peace in the harshest night? When as you rest now with these words drifting through your thoughts, you too may find the questions rising. They do not disturb you. They do not demand you to solve them. They drift like snow in the air, slow, silent, delicate. They settle softly around you, surrounding you not with answers, but with wonder. And wonder, too, can be a form of calm. So let the questions linger. Let them travel through you as they have traveled through centuries. For even if answers fade, the questions themselves lead us closer to stillness. They remind us that within every mystery lies not confusion, but invitation. An invitation to breathe. An invitation to rest. An invitation to sleep. When all the questions have been asked, when every theory has been spoken discipline, faith, destiny, training, there is something that remains. Something so simple, so ordinary, that it is often overlooked. The breath. The king's nights were not carried by grand secrets hidden in scrolls, nor by treasures locked in chambers. His strength was not found in jewels, or in crowns, or in armies waiting outside the gates. It was found in the rhythm of breath. Inhale, exhale, again and again, without end. Breath is the quiet companion of every life. It arrives with us at birth, and it does not leave until the very end. And yet, it is often forgotten, hidden beneath noise, movement, thought. But in the stillness of night, when the world outside rests, breath becomes clear again, becomes the anchor, the teacher, the shelter. The king understood this, though he may not have spoken it. He lay down upon the stone floor, cold air surrounding him, and he listened. Not to servants, not to guards, not to voices of the court. He listened only to his own breath. One inhale, slow and steady. One exhale, long and soft. And with each breath, warmth gathered. With each breath, the body remembered how to rest. You can imagine him there, his chest rising and falling, quiet as the snow drifting beyond the palace walls. Each exhale leaving a faint mist in the air, dissolving almost instantly. Each inhale drawing calm inward, like drawing water from a deep well. There was no struggle, no force, only rhythm, only breath. Think of the way waves arrive upon a shore, one after another, never hurried, never late. They rise, they fall, they return. So it is with breath. So it was with the king, and so it is with you now. If you close your eyes, if you rest your body, you can feel it. Air entering, cool, gentle, invisible. The air leaving, soft, slow, effortless. The body follows this rhythm naturally, as though it has always known the way, for indeed it has. Breath carries warmth through every limb. It softens the hands, heavy from labor. It eases the chest, tight with thought. It loosens the jaw, clenched from words unsaid. With each inhale, calm flows in. With each exhale, tension flows out, again and again and again. The simplicity of breath is its strength. It does not need belief. It does not need ritual. It is here, always waiting. It does not ask for effort. It only asks for attention. It does not ask for answers. It only asks to be followed. Perhaps this is what the king discovered on those frozen nights. That the body does not need fire to warm, nor blankets to protect, when breath itself carries heat, when breath itself carries calm. Perhaps the mystery passed through generations was never a mystery at all. Perhaps it was only this, that breath itself is enough. The guards outside his chamber shivered in their armor. They stamped their feet. They pulled cloaks tighter. They longed for dawn. But inside, the king rested easily. It's not because he was immune to cold. It's not because he was made of stone. But because he followed the simplest path, he followed breath. He allowed the rhythm to cradle him, to carry him gently away from the sharpness of the night into the softness of sleep. You too can follow it now. There is no distance to travel, no wisdom to chase, no ritual to master. Only this. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Slowly, softly, like the tide, like the snow, like the rise and fall of a quiet flame. Notice how each breath changes you, even if only slightly. Notice how your body grows heavier, how your thoughts grow quieter, how the edges of the night soften. Notice how calm arrives not as a sudden flood, but as a slow drift, gentle and steady. This is the same calm the king knew. This is the same warmth that protected him from winter's frost. Not a blanket, not a fire, not a secret locked away, but something as close as his own chest, his own lungs, his own breath. And now it is close to you as well. Already within you, already guiding you, already leading you toward rest. So let the questions of the past fade. Let the mysteries of history soften. Let the simplicity of breath remain. Follow it, as the king once did. Follow it into warmth. Follow it into stillness. Follow it into sleep. Rest, when it is true, does not tremble. It does not falter when the night grows long. It does not shiver when frost creeps closer. It remains steady, unbroken. This was the gift of the king, the unshaken rest. He did not toss from side to side, chasing warmth that was not there. He did not wake in sudden starts, searching for comfort he could not find. He rested deeply, quietly, as if the stone beneath him were as soft as down, as if the frozen air above him were as gentle as spring. He slept, not in defiance of the cold, but beyond it. Imagine the chamber. The walls are bare stone, lined only with silence. No furs cover the floor, no fire glows in the hearth. The only sound is the slow rhythm of breath, rising, falling, steady as a drum heard from afar. Outside, the night is harsh. The wind claws at shutters, the frost grips the earth, the guards shift restlessly. But within the king remains untouched, unshaken, at peace. This kind of rest does not come from force. It does not come from command. It comes from surrender to stillness, surrender to breath, surrender to the calm that already lives within. The king did not resist the cold. He accepted it. He let it be what it was, while he turned inward, finding a warmth untouched by winter's reach. Think of a mountain. Storms may sweep across its peaks, winds may howl against its cliffs, snow may gather upon its ridges. But the mountain remains, silent, steady, unshaken. So it was with the king's rest. So it can be with your rest now. Perhaps you know the nights when sleep trembles, and thoughts scatter like restless birds, when the body will not release its grip on the day, when every sound seems sharper, every shadow heavier. Such nights are common, for we are human. Yet even in such nights there is a path toward unshaken rest. It is the path the king followed. the path of calm, the path of breath, the path of surrender. The secret is not to fight against what is around you. It's not to battle silence or darkness or cold. The secret is to allow them to exist while you drift beneath their weight untouched. The night continues outside, but you are not carried by it. You are carried by something quieter, something deeper, your own stillness. The guards, wrapped in cloaks, stamped their feet to keep blood flowing. They envied their king, though they did not say so aloud. They wondered how he could lie there, uncovered, motionless, and not tremble as they did. They thought perhaps it was magic, perhaps it was a trick, but it was neither. It was the unshaken rest. The kind that comes when body and mind no longer resist the night, but accept it and pass through it untouched. You too may know this rest. You may feel the body softening even now. You may notice the weight of your limbs growing heavier as though they sink into the bed beneath you. You may feel thoughts growing quieter, no longer sharp, no longer demanding. You may notice how the rhythm of your breath becomes like the rhythm of the king's breath, slow, steady, soft. This is the unshaken rest arriving in you. Do not chase it. Do not grasp for it. Allow it to come as it comes, like the tide rising gently against the shore. Allow it to settle upon you, like snow settling upon fields, soft and soundless. Allow it to cover you, to hold you, to still you. Rest is not the absence of the night. Rest is the calm that moves through the night untouched. This is what the king showed. This is what his legend remembers. That even in a frozen chamber, even without fire, even without cover, he found rest that was steady, deep, unshaken. And you too may carry this within you now. The night may stretch on, the air may be cool, the world may continue its endless turning. But within you, there is a stillness untouched by it all. 8. A place where rest does not tremble. A place where rest does not break. A place where rest endures. So let yourself sink into it. Let your breath guide you there. Let your body follow. And as you do, remember, unshaken rest is not only for kings, it is for you as well. Here now, in this night. Every story that travels through time carries with it a gift. This story of the king who lay down upon stone beneath frost and night carries not only questions, not only wonder, but something closer, something waiting quietly within you. It carries the memory of warmth. Not the warmth of fire, not the warmth of furs, but the warmth that lives in the heart of every being, the inner fire. The king did not invent it. He did not own it. He did not hold it apart from others. He simply trusted it. He trusted that, even in the deepest cold, even in the longest night, there was something inside him that could not be taken away. A spark, small at first, but steady. A spark that grew with breath, with calm, with surrender. This spark was his inner fire, and it is yours as well. Close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine it. Glow at the center of your chest, faint but constant. Each inhale feeds it. Each exhale lets it expand. Slowly, gently, it grows warmer. It spreads into your shoulders, softening them. It flows into your arms, heavy and at ease. Travels downward, into your stomach, your legs, your feet, filling them with quiet strength. It rises upward, into your throat, into your face, into your mind, easing every thought, softening every shadow. This is not fire that consumes. It does not burn. It does not destroy. It is fire that comforts. It is fire that steadies. It is fire that warms without flame. It is the warmth of life itself, the warmth that has carried you through every night, through every season, through every winter of the soul. The king lay upon stone, and he felt this fire. He needed no blanket, for the fire was within him. He needed no wood, for the fire did not fade. He needed no words, for the fire spoke in silence. And because he trusted it, he rested. Deeply, peacefully, unshaken. Now, as you lie here, you too can feel it. The same warmth, the same quiet fire, the same steady glow. It is not something distant, not something that belongs to history or legend. It belongs to you. It always has. You may imagine that you are in that ancient chamber, where frost clings to stone and silence hangs heavy. You may imagine yourself lying where the king once lay. And even there, without cover, without fire. You would feel it, the warmth rising from within, spreading softly, carrying you into rest. Because the fire is not the king's alone. It is yours. It is in every breath you take. It is in every heartbeat. It is in every moment of surrender. Generations have wondered how the king endured, but the answer is simple. He did not endure by force or by conquest. He endured by trust. Trust in the breath. Trust in the calm. Trust in the fire that glows within all of us. No, you can trust it too. Trust that the fire will not fade. Trust that it will carry you through the night. Trust that it will guide you into sleep, steady and safe. The story of the king is not only about cold stone or frozen air. It is about discovering that what we seek outside, warmth, comfort, peace, often waits within. It is about remembering that our strength does not always roar. It often whispers. Whispers in the breath. It whispers in the calm. It whispers in the fire that glows quietly, endlessly inside. So as this story draws to its close, let your body grow heavier. Let your breath grow slower. Let your thoughts drift, soft and distant, like snow falling upon fields. Let the fire within you glow brighter, not with heat, but with peace. It will carry you as it carried the king. It will hold you as it has always held you. And now, as night stretches onward, you need not chase sleep. You need not demand it. You need only to rest within the warmth already here. Sleep will rise on its own, gentle and certain, like dawn after the longest night. Your fire is here. Your calm is here. Your rest is here, unshaken, unbroken. Yours. The story is complete now. The journey is finished. Questions have been asked. The echoes have been heard. The silence has spoken. And what remains is not weight, not burden, not cold. What remains is rest. You have walked with the king. You have stood in the frozen night. You have felt the stone, the silence, the frost. And you have discovered, as he did, that within you lives a warmth untouched. A calm, unbroken, a fire unshaken. Now, the night belongs to you. It's not as something to fear, not as something to resist, but as a gift. It stretches before you like a quiet road, wide and endless, carrying you gently into sleep. Each breath you take is a step upon that road, slow, soft, certain, and with every step, the world grows quieter, the body grows heavier, the mind grows softer, until all that remains is the glow of peace, steady and warm. There is nothing left for you to do. No question to answer. There's no story to follow. No burden to hold. Only to rest. Only to drift. Only to sleep. And as you surrender, know this. You carry within you the same gift the king carried. You carry the warmth that cannot fade. Carry the calm that cannot break. You carry the fire that will hold you through this night and every night. So let go now. Let go and be held. Let go and be warmed. Let go and be carried. The story is over. The night is gentle. Sleep is here. Waiting, welcoming. Yours.